Hey guys, welcome to Britannians. I'm Joshua. So in this video, we'll look into the accommodation cost in most of the cities in the UK. So how much will a private accommodation will cost? How much will a university accommodation will cost? That's what I'm going to discuss in this video. We already made a video like long back, I think 2 years before. So I'm just updating the rates based on the current inflation in the current market. So I'll give an overview on when to start your accommodation search, types of accommodation, types of rooms, approximate accommodation cost in some cities in UK, deposit and payment terms, general guarantee requirement, and then some tips when you're taking your accommodation. So let's get into the video. Before moving on to the video, I'd like to thank UniAcco for sponsoring this video. UniAcco is a student accommodation provider in the UK and also in 10 more countries. They're headquartered in India with a strong presence in UK, Australia, US and beyond. UniAcco has a track record of guaranteeing that students find their perfect home. Their properties are located in student-friendly cities, close to prestigious universities, which makes students' lives easier. They have around 1 million users. They have a wide range of room options, varying from studio, ensuite, non-ensuite, twin studio, etc. They have a very good rating and review from their former students. You can click the link in the description, which will take you to the page where you can choose the country in which you want to find the student accommodation, and you can select the city where you want to find an accommodation, and then you can choose your universities, or you can type whichever universities you want, and then you can select your move-in date, and then you can select the number of weeks you want the accommodation, and then you can select your budget, and then you can select whichever room you want. You can type your name in, and then your email address, your phone number and your preferred time slot. So within next 1 to 2 hours, you will receive a WhatsApp message or an email from an expert who will help you throughout the process of finding a good accommodation in the city where you want to live in. They will help you compare across different properties and choose the best one for you. If you're looking out for student accommodation in any of these countries, then do check out UniAcco. So when to start the accommodation search? I would say as soon as you get your offer, university offer, start your accommodation search. Look for the accommodations near universities, check for university accommodation, check for private student halls, check for the houses close by. This will give you an overview of what is the accommodation cost in your area, because usually nowadays, within if you're coming to UK, you have to at least search your accommodation 5 months before you're landing in the UK. Otherwise you won't be able to find a cost effective accommodation, because the accommodation cost will be high, and then you may not be able to find any accommodation because of the shortage of the accommodation in the UK. So I would always advise that start upfront, start as soon as you get your offer. At least start 5 to 4 months before you plan to come to the UK. So what are the types of rooms available here? So while looking for accommodation, you will come across different types of rooms. One is the ensuite room. So the ensuite rooms are rooms where you have your private room, and then you have your own toilet, but you only share the kitchen and the living area with others. There are the single and double rooms. The single rooms will be small and they have a bed size of 3x4, and the double beds are usually queen size beds. If they don't mention ensuite rooms, then usually your rooms will be sharing a toilet with others in the house or in the flat, wherever you're taking the rooms in. So only if it is mentioned ensuite rooms, then you have your own toilet and you only share the other facilities with the people. Studio flats will have their own kitchen, their own toilet, so it's your own space, it's like a one bed flat, but studio flat is basically you have your kitchen in this one side and your bed in one side and toilet in another side. So studio flats are the most expensive one, and then the ensuite rooms are the second expensive ones. And if you're looking for double bed, it will be quite cheaper, and then if you're looking for single bed shared accommodation, then that's the cheapest one that you can get. Next, there are different types of accommodation. So you have the student halls, and then you have the rooms in the houses. So in the student halls, there are like 2 different types. One is the university student halls, which is provided and maintained by the university people. So you have to, once you get your offer, you can email your university and check about the university accommodation, and you can book your university student accommodation. So they are the most expensive one. And then there are the private student halls which are maintained by UniAcco or similar private agents. So they maintain the contracts and everything with the private accommodation people. So these are same student halls, but these are this will be located outside of the university. Mostly for the student halls, you may have to pay fully upfront. So they get a deposit like security deposit, and then you book the room, and then before you coming to the UK, you may have to pay upfront to your university or to the private student accommodation provider, or there may be installment payments like 2 installment or 3 installment, depending on the availability. But usually it is the upfront payment for these student halls. For private rooms in houses, so these are like so there will be houses, and they have landlords or maybe private agents who will do the letting service, and then you can take your own room in a house, so you will have your own space, and then you can share the toilet and the living room, kitchen with other people, or you can get ensuite rooms in private houses, and then you can only share your kitchen and your living room with other people. So there are different types of rooms available in the private houses. In the UK, as per HMO rules, for one room there is only one person allowed, and some landlords allow couples in rooms. So that's only for if they are couple, then they will allow you to stay in the room. These accommodation are a bit cheaper, but then they mostly become unavailable at times, and also people prefer student halls more than private houses to share, because student halls, you know that you will share the house with the students, and they are your university students. But with the private houses or private rooms in the shared houses, you don't know whom you are sharing your house with, so that there may be some problems. You don't know whether your landlord is maintaining it properly or not. So there are some kind of problems involved in the shared houses. So now let's look at the average accommodation cost in different cities. First, we'll look into university student halls. So if you're taking a university student hall in London, it will cost you a minimum of £180 to £330 per week. In Birmingham, Sheffield, Leeds, Manchester, Liverpool, it's usually £120 to £220 per week. In Exeter, Southampton, Plymouth and Brighton, it's £130 to £220 per week. In Leicester or Nottingham, it's £120 to £200 per week. In Bath, it's £150 to £230 per week. In Oxford or Cambridge, it's £140 to £250 per week. In Cardiff, it's £120 to £180 per week. In Newcastle or Middlesbrough, it's £100 to £150 per week. In Edinburgh, it's £130 to £200 per week. In Glasgow, it's £120 to £180 per week. In St Andrews, Aberdeen and Dundee, it's £110 to £180 per week. So you can look into the universities, and you may find this is the range of accommodation cost in these cities. Next is private student halls. In London, it's £135 to £220 per week. In Birmingham, Leeds, Manchester, Liverpool, it's £110 to £180 per week. In Sheffield, it's £95 to £150 per week. In Exeter, Southampton and Brighton, it's £120 to £190 per week. In Plymouth, it's £90 to £160 per week. In Cardiff, it's £140 to £180 per week. In Nottingham or Leicester, it's £100 to £170 per week. In Oxford, Cambridge, £150 to £190 per week. In Liverpool, it's £100 to £140 per week. In Bath, it's £170 to £220 per week. In Newcastle or Middlesbrough, it's £80 to £140 per week. In Edinburgh, it's £130 to £200 per week. In Glasgow, it's £100 to £160 per week. In St Andrews, £130 to £180 per week. In Aberdeen or Dundee, it's £85 to £130 per week. So if you're looking for a house share, or if you're looking for a room in a private house outside, then you will look at a cost of, in London and Bath, it's £100 to £190 per week. Birmingham, Leeds, Sheffield, Manchester, Liverpool, Aberdeen, Dundee, it's usually £90 to £130 per week. Exeter or Edinburgh, it's £90 to £140 per week. Leicester or Nottingham, it's £90 to £160 per week. Oxford and Cambridge, it's £100 to £160 per week. Plymouth, Southampton, Cardiff and Glasgow, it's £80 to £120 per week. Newcastle, it's £65 to £110 per week. St Andrews is £125 to £150 per week. These give you a rough figure of how much the accommodation cost will be in these cities. So this will help you to prepare your finances beforehand, So that's why I'm explaining these costs to you. And some people, they just want to come to UK, they want to take a temporary accommodation, and they then want to search their houses. So you can ask your university for temporary accommodation, or you can look into booking.com, Airbnb, homestay. So you can book for up to 2 weeks to 1 month as a short-term accommodation. So this will help you to come here and then view the accommodation and then book the accommodation whenever you want. So the deposit for these accommodation, usually for university accommodation, they ask you 0 to 250 pounds. Private halls, they ask about 5 weeks rent. For if you're having a house share, you pay 5 weeks rent to 2 months rent as a deposit. And payment terms, usually for university accommodation, it's fully upfront or 3 installments. Private halls, it's fully upfront or 3 to 4 installments if you have a guarantor. Private or rooms or house share, it's usually monthly installments if you have a guarantor, or it's 3 to 4 installments if you don't have a guarantor. There is a guarantor requirement. So in UK, usually they ask for a guarantor because they don't know you. They are coming from outside UK, so they don't know like who you are and whether you will pay the rent in time. So there are like lots of problems. So what they do is they ask for a guarantor, and the guarantor has to be a person who is earning in the UK. So some landlords or some agents, they won't give you the house if you don't have a guarantor. As an international student, we usually don't have a guarantor. So there are like websites where you can search for guarantor. So always look into reliable websites. So you can ask your friends maybe who can be your guarantor, or your relations who are here. You can ask them, they can be your guarantor. If you don't have anyone, and if you desperately need a guarantor, then go and search for guarantor website. There are number of websites out there. I will list some in the description. You can go and check it, but always check whether these people who are showcasing themselves as a guarantor in the website as a legit one, because sometimes there are some scams that's happening. So be aware of it. Usually they charge you around 250 to 350 pounds to be a guarantor for you. And the final tip that I would tell you is, if you're taking an accommodation in a house share, or in a you're taking a private room outside university, then always take including bills, which means the electricity, the gas, and water. So these are included in your bills, and also internet, it's included in your bills, because bills nowadays, due to the inflation, energy bills are high. You expect a huge energy bill if you don't have your bills included. So always take accommodation with the bills included. And you don't have to pay a council tax. So if anyone is telling that you have to pay a council tax, tell them that you are not obliged to pay a council tax. Since you are a student, you don't have to pay, but if you are a working professional, then you have to pay your council tax. I hope this video is useful for you. If you like the video, hit the like button, share the video, subscribe to the channel. We'll meet in next video. Until then, goodbye, cheers.